Well, I'm delighted to welcome everybody to this online information session. We're here today to talk about the MSc in Experimental and Translational Therapeutics, which is run at Oxford University through the Department of Continuing Education. So I'm Dr. Elaine Johnstone, as I said. I'm just going to move my picture down. I am the co-director of the MSc, along with Professor Len Seymour, who you may meet in future, or you can Google him to see what he's interested in. He's a professor of gene therapy here at Oxford, and very knowledgeable on biological therapeutics, which is one of our major focus of the course. So I've got a lot of experience in translational research. I did a PhD back in the day in cancer research at the University of Newcastle, which was really inspirational to me to look at pharmacology of drug mechanisms, and really kind of started my career looking at translational research as a scientist, but really working at that interface between the bench and the bedside. I'm lucky enough to have lots of publications in the area, and I am the module lead of module 3 on the course, which focuses really again on how drugs act, the pharmacology, the basic understanding of molecular pharmacology, and how we can use biomarkers to inform better or more personalized or precision medicine. And that's one of our themes of the course. So just to give you a little overview of the whole program, we're really aspirational in this MSc, and we're one of the only MScs, I think, in Oxford that cuts across disciplines. So we use a variety of examples of molecular medicine and experimental medicine to highlight, what the kind of exciting research that's going on across Oxford, and how we can translate that into therapeutic benefits for patients. So again, I've made this point already, but the bench to bedside transition is a really key transition for us. There's lots of work going on in Oxford in multiple different disease areas. And it's a very exciting time, actually, currently. There's, translational research has really come to the fore. It's everybody now sees the potential of their research, and the applicability to improve patients' health is a real key benefit of studying with us. So we do that by delivering face-to-face teaching on the underpinning themes related to these research areas across the university. As I said, it's a part-time course, but also flexible. So it's designed for people to study whilst being in full-time employment. You don't have to be, but a lot of our students are, and the part-time nature of the program lends itself to that. So who are our kind of students, typical students that normally study with us? Well, it's very varied. And one of the strengths really of the course is that we have such a diverse bunch of students. They each add complementary expertise to our discussions, and everyone there is interested in some aspect of therapeutics. So we have professionals from the pharmaceutical industry, from healthcare, from business development, clinical development, commercialization, people that work within clinical trials, so delivering clinical trials operationally, or design clinical trials, or interpret clinical trials, and also regulators. So obviously all of our medicines are regulated, and that's a really key component to the course. We also, it also can really be useful for continuing professional development. And I think, again, many students come to this course with different aims and different ambitions out of the course. Some want to test the waters of academia and see if they have an interest in pursuing full-time study. Others really want to find out what the cutting edge research is in Oxford, which is a great way to do that in these kind of areas. And others really want to fill in their knowledge. So they work in one particular area of the pipeline, which I'll come on to in a moment. And they really want to understand the whole drug development process, which has amazing breadth, and many different facets and professions work within that. So there's a real variety of ambitions on our course, and really lends to the flavour of discussion. Importantly, the course is disease agnostic, and I've mentioned this already. It takes its learning and teaching from across the university, across many different departments, primarily within medical sciences. So it has relevance to many different fields, and lots of our themes are cross-cutting. So we teach the underlying principles of developing novel therapeutics, and you can really apply that to your own area. And we're happy to discuss, particularly with if you have a unique area of study, how our learnings apply to that. The tutors are more than happy to discuss that within the teaching weeks. As I mentioned, the teaching weeks make up a module. So we take 6 taught modules across the course and a dissertation in the field of experimental and translational therapeutics. All of our modules are compulsory, no optional modules are available, but they can be taken in any order. Now, the small caveat to that is that we like our students to come in for module 1 at the beginning of the course. This really sets the scene for the future of experimental therapeutics. It really gives a flavour of the future modules within that introductory module. And also it's the start of term in Oxford, which is always an exciting time. Students come in, there's a lot going on, there's a sense of excitement for the new academic year ahead. We're about to run this next week, so we're really excited to meet our new cohort. The MSc is usually completed in 2 years, although often it's extended and can be taken in 3. But the dissertation is, again, usually taken in the final year. So that's the culmination of your learning. Once you've done your modules or done some of the modules, you can really apply that learning into a novel research project of your own interest. So the modules look like this. They're, as I said, module 1 is the first module and really talks about why clinical trials are structured that way and what we need to know about designing experimental therapeutics. Module 2 focuses on very early stage drug development, pharmacokinetics and imaging. Module 3, as I mentioned, is the one I lead, and that focuses really on biomarkers and precision or personalized therapy. Module 4 looks a little bit later in the process and looks at adverse drug reactions, drug interactions and pharmacovigilance. Very important to understand the safety of our medicines. Module 5 is our most practical module, and that teaches students how to design research on therapeutic interventions with a focus on clinical trial protocols. So those are the real backbone of clinical research. And we teach people what they are and how to construct one and what the sections, relevant knowledge is to go in the relevant sections on that. Module 6, which is Professor Seymour's module, is biological therapeutics. And most of our students take that towards the end of their course. And these modules have each been carefully designed to really map the drug development pipeline. Now, as we know, this can be quite a long process, although in recent years it has been proved to be possible to be shortened. But this is a slightly outdated slide now, but generally the process of designing and testing a novel medicine would take, around 10 years. It's a very labor-intensive process. It focuses on the left from really underpinning biology of the disease in question and discovering new targets, developing agents against those targets, moves through into preclinical research, and then, and there's some attrition there between, the number of compounds that are suitable for early drug targets and those which move into clinical testing. So if we go from 10,000 compounds to 250 and then down to 5 that we think are good candidates to go into first in human studies, we then really focus on this in our MSc, and that testing process is the key to understanding experimental therapeutics. So what the clinical trial pipeline is, how we can best design and test our novel medicines to see whether or not they are better or as good as existing medicines that we have already. So moving from phase 1 through to phase 2, we call that early phase clinical trials, then out to phase 3, which is a larger general population testing, and that gives us a better indication of the effects of any novel medicine on the general population, and then into phase 4 if appropriate. Then we move out of the clinical testing sphere if we get a positive readout into applying for a new drug license, and that moves into the regulatory space. So all of that can lead us down to one approved drug. It's quite a costly process, which we haven't mentioned here, but how can we best refine this process in order to maximize the chances of success is what we're interested to learn on the course. So the teaching staff involved, I've already mentioned Professor Len Seymour and myself. We also have Professor Rachel Kerr, who is a consultant medical oncologist, works primarily in colorectal cancer, and is a really excellent teacher, has been teaching for many years and has been involved in many hundreds of clinical trials. We also have Dr. Emma Murphy and Dr. Tryphon Zaganis Tsitsikakis, who are the Module 2 leads. And they work at the Centre for Medicines Discovery here in Oxford, which focuses on early stage drug discovery and target validation. Dr. Michael Theodorakis is a diabetes clinician, who's very interested in clinical trials and very interested in comorbidities and polypharmacy and adverse drug reactions. So he's a world-leading expert in pharmacovigilance. And Dr. Grant Vallance, who originally started as an ethicist and now is very involved in data management in clinical trials. And along with Susan Tonks, who is, chairs an ethics committee and is very familiar with clinical trial protocols and especially regarding the impact on patients are our Module 5 leads. So the learning objectives is quite a long list here because of the breadth of the course, but really at the end of the course, our students we aim for our students to come out with a really thorough understanding of drug design and development and testing. We teach on pharmacokinetics and drug metabolism, understanding when we take the medicine, what then happens to that medicine, what the body does to the drug, how it's excreted, eliminated, metabolized, etc. How non-invasive imaging is really increasing in use in early phase testing and late phase testing also. How best to design our clinical trials for a range of novel therapies, again, using different disease examples. We really want to underpin the understanding of the pharmacodynamics, so what the drug's doing to the body, understanding drug mechanisms better, and being able to describe biomarkers and potential assays that might support trial endpoints or support really and increase our scientific knowledge that we gain from a clinical trial question. Adverse drug reactions, drug interaction, pharmacovigilance is a really key theme of the course, and ethical issues of clinical trial participation. Now, Module 6 is really cutting edge and draws its teachers and tutors from across the university again. And those are all doing current cutting edge research into novel biological therapeutics. And this is the module where I think we've seen the biggest change in the last 5 years. So only 5 years ago, most of these lectures were at the kind of discovery stage or the early testing stage. Really, not a lot of them had moved into human trials. We're seeing really encouraging results, particularly in rare disease and developmental disorders. Gene therapies and cell therapies are having a huge amount of success and a very large impact. So it's nice to see that research coming to translation, patient benefit. The course commitments and assessments. So we expect you to be in Oxford for the 1-week modules. So that's 6 times over 2 years. They're delivered face-to-face at Rewley House, which is shown on the right here. Each of these modules has an associated assignment, and that is assessed by a variety of written work, which you will find out if you come on the course. As I said, the last component is the dissertation project, which usually is a novel research project, but can really be anything. It can be a literature review, a systematic review, a clinical trial assessment of published data, some kind of bioinformatics that uses publicly available data. Really, that's one of the strengths of our course. I think that our students can design with us, of course, a bespoke project that suits their development needs. So occasionally we have students that want to do laboratory projects, that's also fine. But we spend a lot of time making sure that the project that the student is doing is relevant to them. It's not just available off the shelf. So I think hopefully that will be a good experience for you. And this is written up as a 15,000 word dissertation thesis. So that sounds a lot, but actually once you get writing, it isn't. So don't be daunted by that. It is a key component of the MSc, and you're very well supported through the process. So what are we looking for in our students? Well, a first or upper second class undergraduate degree with honours, usually in a biological science or medical science subject, including pharmacy and nursing. We have great students previously that have been in all of these areas. For applicants from the US, we normally would ask for a GPA of 3.6. This is not wholly the student body, though. I must point out that some of our students come with different backgrounds. So they have economics undergrad, or a nursing qualification, but not a BSc, but have substantial professional experience. So work in biotech or pharmaceutical industry, or are actively surveilling for novel drug entities. So do get in touch with us if you've got a slightly unusual background, you're not coming through the kind of biological or medical science background, and we're happy to discuss, professional experience and whether that can be applied to our entry criteria. Applications are open as of last week. So again, very exciting time for us to see our new applications. The deadline is the 28th of January, 2026. I would strongly encourage you all to apply before this deadline, those of you who are listening to this live or recorded. It's the latest deadline for most of the Oxford scholarships, and you will not be considered for these if your application is even a day late. This is a strict deadline. So if you want to be considered for those, then do get your application in early. There is a second deadline, which is the 3rd of March. You won't be considered for scholarships, but if we're still accepting applications, then please use this as your deadline. Again, it's really, really helpful to get applications in early for us, because the college places can't be guaranteed the later you apply. So it's an early application is, I can't stress this enough, really advantageous. Once the course places are full, applications will close. And it would be a shame to miss out because of a deadline. So please send us your application or start discussing it with us as soon as you like. We're here to answer questions and obviously consider your application carefully, but do get it in early if at all possible. The college system is a really fantastic benefit of the Oxbridge system. And as an MSc student, you'll become a member of one of these colleges. The real strength of the colleges is they bring together students in a similar position, but with different and complementary expertise, not dissimilar to the course, but with a wider range of interests, obviously, in the different divisions, only humanities or social sciences. And you learn different perspective and make new friends for life over dinner. The colleges that are listed here are those that accept our students. So Kellogg being the most common, which I'm a fellow of, by the way, and it's a great college, the first college to accept part-time students in Oxford. So it has a great history of that, supporting part-time students in the unique situation that you find yourselves in. But also St Hilda's, a new college, if you want the more traditional Oxford experience, do put these as your first choice on your application. You can state no preference, but then you'll be put into a kind of open ballot that goes between these colleges to see where you'll be placed. Reuben's one of the newer colleges, which is again very exciting, a nice focus on biomedical sciences and engineering. So if you've got an engineering or other background, then do consider that. St Catherine's really nice college. They're all fantastic, really. St Cross, a couple of my students are up this year and really love that. You know, it's part of the Oxford experience, and I would encourage you to make the most of your college whilst you're here. It gives you pastoral support and other types of support socially and otherwise. Oh, just a note about the PMST, sorry, the pharmaceutical medicine specialty training. So if you're a clinician, one of our clinical colleagues, this is for you. Our course does align with the Royal College of Physicians Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine Training. If you're interested in this, do get in touch. I can put you in touch with other students who have used this in the past as credit towards their diploma in pharmaceutical medicine. And you know, it's pharmaceutical medicine is one of the things we teach on our course, but doesn't cover the whole curriculum. But there is enough synergy that we can work together to achieve the same goal, and that's so do follow that up if you like. There's a current student this year that's actually doing that as well, so it's very worthwhile. And then just to finish off, a couple of anecdotes or experiences of our students. We collect these, you know, regularly. So look on the website if you'd like to see more of these. But this is Ernie. He was a student a few years ago now, and really embodied the concept of lifelong learner. He's really interested in learning about many, many things, and really valued the part-time nature of the course. You know, he's a lawyer, so has a full schedule, but loves learning. So really, and loved being in Oxford, really threw himself into the extracurricular activities such as the Oxford Union, debating, etc. But really, you know, got the most out of our course because of his high engagement. And this is Josh, who is a slightly different kind of student. He had a degree in biomedical science, and was really torn as to whether he wanted to do a DPhil or PhD, whether he wanted to pursue further academic study. He was working in industry, but really just at the back of his mind was thinking, oh, maybe I would like to do something further. So came to RMSC to kind of test the water, and very much working in industry on the kinds of biological therapies that we discussed. So brought his own expertise to the course, but, you know, filled in the rest of the modules with that. And he's highlighting the kind of the rich body of experience from the tutors. So we have a variety of different tutors. We have academics, we have industry and medical professionals, and we really think that is important to give the different perspectives that each of those bring towards translation of novel therapies. So Josh has now gone on to do it, to make the leap and jump into a PhD program, which is great to hear. Help him realize his ambitions by being on the course. So that's the end of my talk. We're now going to turn to the questions part of it. Excellent. So the first question, I think, is, can you apply for this program with an MPhil in molecular biology? Yes, I think that's absolutely appropriate experience. We'd consider your application for that. Cardiac surgery and cardiovascular health. Can a non-academic clinical consultant serve as my supervisor? That's a very specific question. We'd happily discuss that. I think we do have rules about having an academic supervisor, but in that case, it would probably be best to have a joint supervision. So you'd have an external mentor, which would be your clinical consultant. and then you would be also assigned an academic supervisor, because even if they're clinically qualified, obviously they're very qualified to do that job, but it's nice to have someone that's familiar with the university environment and the university requirements. Can you choose a supervisor from any department? You can, yeah, absolutely. You can approach them and say, you know, would you be happy to be my supervisor? That is done kind of in partnership with myself, I would say, and would be a kind of discussion within the first year. You know, designing your project is first, and then looking for suitable supervisors usually, but it can be done the other way around. Supervisors have to be at Oxford University, so you couldn't choose a supervisor from a different university, but again, they could be that external mentor that I mentioned. You can carry the dissertation out at your home institution if that's your place of work. We don't really have any requirements because of the part-time nature of the course. People cannot always spend 3 months doing a dissertation project in Oxford, so we're very flexible on location, but you do have to have an Oxford University supervisor. I think that's all those. I won't answer any questions on fees. That's really for the admin team to comment upon, but the fees are all on the website if you check there or drop us an email. Again, there's 2 questions on that. Someone with a background in natural sciences, absolutely. If you're interested in therapeutics, then I would encourage you to apply. That's as long as you've got your undergraduate degree or about to get your undergraduate degree. Next question says, how can we apply for a scholarship? So that's part of the application project. Again, sorry, the application process. So, you know, again, do reach out and seek advice for that, but it's an automatic part of the application process. Now you can tick which scholarships you're interested in being considered for. They are very competitive, I would add. There's another question about scholarships there. What is the criteria to get a scholarship? Well, the university criteria, again, look at the websites. The Clarendon scholarships are applicable to part-time students, so please follow up with that and check their website. They'll have contact details to say what their criteria are they use. It's not at the course level that the scholarships are decided, it's at the university level. We nominate students and then they are considered above. Could the subject help me become a subject matter expert in first in human trials or first dose in human trials? It certainly contains that sessions on that subject. And we would teach you about that, certainly. So subject matter experts, that's a little bit subjective. So we'd certainly give you the initial information. You may have to do some own research in your own time, but that's certainly an integral part of the course. That's what we're here to learn, is how to best translate our therapeutics from the bench through to clinical testing. And first in human trials are a really important part of that. We have a clinical research facility here at the university, which focuses on that. So we could certainly help you with that. Hello, Peter. Nice to see you again. Hello. Well, a reapplication, yeah, reapplications are, yes, definitely possible. Should be similar process. It may have been updated slightly, but yes, that's definitely possible. What are the characteristics of ideal students that I'm looking for? I'm looking for someone who has a real interest in this subject. I'm not looking for students who just want to tick a box that they want a qualification from Oxford. I want students that are engaged and really motivated to succeed. So they really want to improve. One student particularly is coming to mind from last year that started the course very unsure as to what they wanted out of the course, and then have really been on an upward trajectory since then. You know, really love the course material, are off finding their own, you know, dissertation project ideas. They're just inspired by the material. Apart from those entry requirements, some professional experience is helpful but not essential. We're really looking for, as I say, keen and motivated students that are really looking to progress in this area. Then as for destinations for fellow graduates, again, very variable. So I was just putting some information together of the last cohorts and saying that some, again, as the student spotlights highlight, some are interested in a PhD and further studies. Some are interested in kind of getting into industry, I would say, so cracking into industry as an early career scientist. Some are looking to move careers within industry, so they work in R&D or they work in pharmacovigilance, but they want to move departments within their company or to a different company. Our graduates are quite mobile that are in industry. They usually use the learning of the course to progress their careers in different ways. We can give you some information about that if you like. Please get in touch. I've done a degree in biological science and I'm working in the JR. You can apply for this program, absolutely, if you had a 2-1 or a first in your undergrad. Pharmacy, then I would definitely encourage you to apply. We usually have one pharmacist on the program. We've got one finishing off at the moment, and they, again, everybody brings their own expertise. Pharmacy employees are very knowledgeable about medicine dispensing, medicine drug interactions. So again, very much overlapping with the themes of the course. I do not have a first or second class pass with honours, but I've got my medical degree with 5 years clinical trial experience and a master's in public health. Sound very qualified. Your application will be very considered. Yes, it will definitely considered. Again, most students, that's hard to say. It's so variable on a cohort by cohort basis. Yes, we have, I would say, probably about a third in industry, a third in academic, and a third in kind of clinical roles. So they follow various career paths to do with that. Does the program allow for students to build on interest in genomics and look at gene therapy? So yes, absolutely. Yeah, we teach on genomics and pharmacogenomics, certainly in module 3, because that's one of the main ways that we can use medicine more precisely and molecularly targeted therapies in cancer. Really important to know what the genomic background of the person is, but also in other disease areas it's becoming more common. Particularly with gene therapy. So yes, absolutely, you'd get that in a couple of modules and you could use your dissertation to explore that further. Absolutely. I would love to know more about the course and have a real experience. Would it be possible to have a discussion with the faculty and current cohort before applying? So we do have another session, Hannah, is that right? I'm not sure if that's timetabled in, but we usually plan another session where the faculty come together and we can get a current student to come on. So you don't have to travel. It will be another online session. But watch this space for when that is.
Yeah, that happens in January. Normally, we'll organise that.
Before the deadline, yeah. Before the January deadline. I have 3 years BSc in biochemistry, no honours with 2 years working experience in pharmaceutical. Can I apply? Yes, I would encourage you to apply because you've got a degree and a couple of years experience. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I know that in different countries, different entry, different degree programs have different names. So yes, we're happy to consider your application. I would encourage you all to apply if you're interested in doing this program. It's really nice to see lots of diversity in our applications. Okay, excellent. Well, I don't believe there's any more questions. That was swiftly done. So I'd really like to thank you all for joining us. I hope it's been useful. And as I say, do come back to the next session if you'd like to learn more. If you've got any questions, as Hannah says, please get in touch. We're happy to answer them. But for today, I wish you all a good rest of day wherever you are in the world. And I hope to speak to you or see your application soon.
I believe we actually have had one more question.
Oh, sorry, Hannah, I'm signing off.
No, that's all
two
right.
more.
Just as we've got a few more minutes left.
I'm a medical doctor. I have extensive research experience, conducted 2 clinical trials. Yes. That's a classic case of please getting in touch. You've got a lot of experience that's very relevant to the course. So, your publication list will speak for itself, and we'd be happy to look at your application. Is there any AI application related? I'm not sure I understand that question. The university, it's a good topical question about AI, and the university has revised its policy on AI over the summer, and now is providing free access to ChatGPT Edu as part of the university experience. And lots of people are talking about this at the moment. So again, I've just been thinking about this for the new students. And whilst AI is really incredibly useful for sorting large amounts of information, our course believes that content generation through AI is not the best path to learning. So the assignments or summative assessments particularly develop really important skills in critical analysis, development of arguments, etc. So that kind of critical analysis, original thoughts, these are really key skills, particularly at the postgraduate level. And I wouldn't want anyone to finish our program without developing these to their full extent. They're real to optimize their learning. That's why we're here, to provide a great educational process. And why would you rely on AI when you've got access to so many academics and tutors across Oxford? It is useful for some things, and obviously people are widely using these models now to inform their learning, but not to replace, importantly. These things have got to be developed like a muscle. You've got to use these skills, your own personal skills, to develop them to a kind of academic standard, as it were. So really good place to have that discussion. Can you simultaneously apply for this MSc and a DPhil in medical sciences? I believe you can, but I will look into that. I think so, because I believe people can make concurrent applications, and then you can choose which to do at the last minute. That's up to you. Multiple applications are possible. I believe there's a limit on how many, but I think 2 is possible. Are there any more questions before we finish off? Thank you for your interactivity today. It's been lovely to answer your questions, and I hope to meet you all again soon. Hannah, are we okay to finish off?
Yes, I think that's all the questions for now. Thank you, everyone.
Super. Well, as I said, lovely to meet you all, albeit virtually, and I hope to see you all in person very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.